All right, y'all. Welcome back to the Ecom Dispensary Knowledge Drop number 29. In this one, this is episode number 118. We are talking about the key numbers, the KPIs, the key performance indicators in Ecom. These are just kind of the main metrics to be aware of. We want to walk you guys through what these numbers are, what they mean, what drives them, and kind of talk about some of these key levers that you kind of want to focus on. These are things that you really need to just have a basic understanding of them to be able to understand where you're at in your business. You know, you can be running a business and you could think things are going really well, but if you don't know your numbers, then you really have no idea. So I think it's really important that you know your numbers. And again, this is not very complicated, but there's a few key metrics that we want to go over. Just make sure that you guys understand these and are able to accurately assess where you're at in your business. So Scotty, I'm gonna let you take it away here. What are some of these metrics, man? What are some of these metrics? What do you think are the most important? I know you added a couple things here. I'm curious to hear your take on what metrics are the most important, where you should really be focusing your time and attention, etc.
Yeah. So, most important metrics in my book are net profit, ROAS, net margin.
Yeah.
Those are
profit is really the number one. That's
profit is the number one, although at some point, if you add profit but margin goes down, that's going to create more headaches than it creates than the extra money might be worth. So if you go from $1,000 a day in profit to $1,200 in profit a daily, but your margin drops in half, probably not worthwhile, because it's going to create it's going to mean that you need so much more inventory in stock and your turnover is so much higher. You have more money tied up. There's just a lot more stuff that can go wrong as well. So you want to have healthy margins, even if it means a slightly lower total profit number. But that's a sort of niche, or that's
getting in the weeds a little bit.
Yeah, that's an obscure issue. Generally, bigger net profit is good. Profits are good. Profits is how we buy the bottles in the cars.
Doing a whole lot of buying bottles and cars these days, huh?
Oh yeah, loads. So after that, that's obviously what you're optimizing for overall. But then there's the question of how do we get to a higher net profit number? Higher net profit number, you can either increase revenue or you can decrease expenses.
We're going to talk a lot about that in the next episode, about specific ways to do that. It's kind of like a two-part thing, and this one kind of going over the metrics, and then in the next one talking about specific ways to improve those metrics.
Right. So in terms of increasing your revenue, you have a couple levers. This is getting more into the weeds, sort of into the Facebook ads and the Shopify side of it, instead of just overall big picture. So to increase your revenue, you can either increase the amount of traffic to your site. How can you increase an amount of traffic to your site? You can increase the amount you spend on ads. You can try to increase your click-through rate, meaning that your cost per click is going to go down. You're going to get more clicks for the same amount of ad spend. That's getting more traffic. Alternatively, you can keep the same amount of traffic and improve your conversion rate, so that instead of 2 out of 100 people buying, 5 out of 100 people buy. Obviously, that's going to dramatically increase your revenue, because same amount of traffic, you're getting 2.5 times as many sales. The thing about all these metrics is they're all interconnected. So some of them are directly connected, where it's literally a formula, like CPM, CTR, and CPC. You can calculate, if you have any two of them, you can calculate the third. But that's just simple mathematics. It's definitions of these metrics. But then there's also stuff like conversion rate is connected to your CPM, which is not mathematical. It's not a case of definition, it's just kind of how Facebook works. So CPM is the cost for 1,000 impressions on Facebook. Conversion rate, of course, is the percentage of people that buy once they're on your site. These shouldn't really be connected, but they are, because Facebook knows who is most likely to buy. And the people who are most likely to buy, showing ads to those people is more expensive than showing ads to people who have never bought before. Therefore, if your CPM goes up, you might be thinking, this is horrible. I need to stop this. I need to solve this problem. Why are my CPMs rising? What you might later realize, or what you might be overlooking, is that as your CPMs rise, your conversion rate might also be rising. So it might not actually be a bad thing. It might just be Facebook optimizing towards a higher value segment of their audience, or of your audience. More common, I would say, is probably the reverse, where people think they're fucking geniuses because they have a 6% conversion rate on their store, and they think they're great at copy. They're just overall just mega brain geniuses. But then they come to us and say like, hey, my CPMs are super high. I really need to get these CPMs down. Or they say Facebook is broken. Like, look at my ad account. CPMs are ridiculous. Not realizing that the two things are connected. It's like, if you get your CPMs down from $30 to $10, your conversion rate is not going to stay the same. It just isn't. So you just have to realize that some of these metrics, or pretty much all of these metrics, are connected, and yeah, understand how that works, and just understand how you can't look at any one of these metrics on their own. Like, a $30 CPM is not better than an $8 CPM. You cannot say which is better without more data.
Yeah, because I mean, the CPM specifically is very directly related to the quality of traffic. So like you were saying, if you have a high CPM, it could mean that, it could mean that your ads are just not really resonating with who you're showing them to. And Facebook is kind of in a way penalizing you, since that they're supposedly optimizing for the best user experience for their users. And if you're showing ads that don't resonate with who you're trying to show them to, then they're probably going to give you a high CPM. But on the other hand, you could be getting a high CPM because you're just targeting really high quality traffic. And you could be getting a low CPM because you're just getting low quality traffic, or you could have a low CPM because your ads are really, really solid and they really resonate with who you're showing them to.
Yep, 100%. 100%. And there's no real way to know which it is. It's just experience, being in the trenches. And at the end of the day, your CPM doesn't matter. It's your ROAS, it's your net profit that matters at the end of the day. So if that number is right, keep trying to improve everything else. Keep looking at CPM to get a picture of what might be happening, but don't hyperfixate on any one of these metrics if overall things are moving in the right direction.
So we've gone over some of these. Average order value, that's the average amount that a customer spends on your store. LTV, lifetime value, the average amount that a customer spends on your store over the course of their lifetime. We have some of the more specific, like Facebook ad metrics. CPM, it's the cost per 1,000 impressions. CTR, click-through rate, the percentage of people who see your ad that actually click on it. Cost per click, which is the amount that you're spending to get one click to your website. Conversion rate percentage, the amount of people who, the amount of your website visitors who are purchasing out of 100. Now we have some other ones here that you added, Scotty. Gross profit and cost per purchase. What made you put those together? What's your thinking here?
Yeah, so gross profit and cost per purchase. I put those together because your gross profit on its own doesn't really say anything. And neither does your cost per purchase. It's looking at them in relation to each other, especially when you're thinking about what is the best offer to make. So
what's gross profit, Scotty?
Okay, gross profit is the amount you're selling an item for minus the cost of goods and shipping. So minus what it costs you to send it to the customer. The reason we put them
Your
together,
profit, not including ad costs or any other expenses.
exactly. So gross profit is like if you've got a $30 gross profit per order, that means you can spend up to $30 to acquire that order in order to break even. So your cost per purchase needs to be lower than your gross profit. That is the absolute rule, at least if you're trying to be profitable on the front end. Now, when you're trying to come up with an offer, a higher gross profit isn't always better, because in some cases, lowering your price, which lowers your gross profit, obviously, will have a more drastic effect on your cost per purchase than it has on your gross profit. So if you can lower your gross profit by $3 by making your offer more attractive, but by doing so, lower your cost per purchase by $5, you're going to come out ahead.
Yeah. And that's a function of conversion rate, right? Because if you make a better offer, you're going to have more people converting, all else equal. And then that's going to make your cost per purchase go down.
Yep, 100%.
It's all connected. It's all connected.
And I mean, to take it even further, your CPC might even go down as well, because if you're making a super compelling offer, you're going to put that in your ads and it's going to capture attention. It's going to get more people to click. So it has effects higher up the funnel as well.
Yep.
But really, this is probably the most important thing in this entire episode. The idea of when you're thinking about offers, ask yourself, is this change in offer? Okay, first of all, how much does it change my gross profit? Number one. And second of all, do I think my cost per purchase is going to go down more or less than my gross profit went down? And it works the opposite way too. Sometimes you might want to increase the price, where increasing the price increases your gross profit more than it increases your cost per purchase. And then that is probably worth doing as well.
Yep. That makes sense. Next one we got here is refund and return rate.
Yep. I mean, pretty simple refund rate. Out of your past month sales, what percentage of refunds did you have? I included returns as well, because for some businesses, you might do more exchanges than actual refunds. It's a little harder to track. In fact, I don't even really know how you would track it. We keep track of it by logging or counting the number of draft orders we do. So we include that in our in-house sort of reports. Yeah, I don't know what exactly you would pull up on Shopify to get that easily.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a little bit more complicated, but obviously you want that number to be as low as possible. You want to be issuing the least amount of refunds as you possibly can, having the least amount of returns, because those things are expensive. Thing about refunds too is when someone refunds, you're not only losing the money that they gave you for the product, but you're losing the money that you spent on ads to acquire them as a customer. So kind of like you're actually losing more than it seems on the surface.
I guess, yeah. Yeah. The other thing about refunds to keep in mind is it's kind of tough to calculate your refund rate, because if I pull up Shopify right now and I look at August revenue versus August refunds, you would think that's your refund rate, but it actually kind of isn't, because revenue is for sales that happened in August, whereas the refunds are mostly for sales that happened prior to August. So the refunds we're sending out right now are for July, June, maybe a little bit of August, but mostly July and June sales. So there's a lag there. And to be honest, we don't really keep track of it. Like, we don't correctly attribute refunds to when the sale was made, just because it's impractical. I think we might do it in our official books at the end of the year, but day to day, we don't do that. But it is important to keep in mind, because here's the thing. If you scale up and you go from doing 50K a month in sales, suddenly you're doing 300K, and you scale up quickly, or even just if your sales double, you might think your refunds are under control because the percentage of refunds versus sales is low, but the refunds you're issuing are from a time where your revenue was half what it is right now. So your actual refund rate is likely double what you're seeing on a P&L or in Shopify right now. That's just something to keep in mind, and that will really fucking hurt you if you ever get an ad account disabled, or if you just go through a slump where, okay, you scaled up, everything was looking great, suddenly something happens, or just seasonality happens, and your sales are down 50%, but you're now doing refunds from the time where your sales were higher. And that hurts. Does not look good on the daily P&L. Let me tell you that.
Yep. Yeah, that can definitely hurt. That's just kind of how it goes, though. And I don't know. That's just kind of back to the original point. That's why you want to keep refunds as low as possible. We're going to talk more about that in the next episode. Besides that, I mean, I think those are kind of most of the main levers: your average order value, your click-through rate, your cost per click, conversion rate percentage. There's some other ones that we're going to talk about in the next episode, but those are kind of the main ones to understand. You just, again, this isn't super complicated. You just have to understand how these metrics relate to each other and how they affect the number one metric, which is net profit. So most of it's pretty common sense. You know, your average order value, if you increase your average order value, all else equal, you're going to increase your profit, as long as the cost of goods for whatever you're doing isn't going up drastically. You know, that's going to increase your profit. If your click-through rate increases on your ads, that's probably going to increase your profit because you're getting more people to your website, all else equal. If your conversion rate increases, that's like, I mean, that's a huge one because that's just like so direct. If you increase your conversion rate by 50%, if you go from 2% conversion rate to, I guess it's, let's say, yeah, you get from 2% conversion rate to 3% conversion rate. That's a 50% increase in conversion rate, but that's also a 50% increase in profit, right? If you go from 2 to 3%, that's huge, right? A 50% increase in profit is absolutely massive. So those are some of the things to be aware of. We're going to go into a lot more depth in the next episode and talk about specific ways that you can actually increase these metrics, which I think this next one might end up being one of the most valuable Ecom Dispensary episodes we've ever done. We'll see.
Maybe.
Well, you got anything else to add before we get to it, Scott Man?
Don't think I do.
All right, folks. In that case, we'll talk to you guys in the next one.